When people came to the Buddha, they often brought the same ache in different clothes. A monarch worried about power that would not hold. A parent feared the frailty of love. A wanderer chased purity through hardship and found only exhaustion. The Buddha did not begin with flattery, nor with condemnation. He began with a clear diagnosis. Life, as we usually hold it, rubs. That rub he called dukkha. It is not only pain or grief. It is also the strain of trying to make changing things behave like guarantees. He paired that diagnosis with two linked insights about the way things are. First, everything built from conditions changes. Bodies change. Moods change. Seasons of fortune change. Second, what we call a self is not a sealed gem hiding behind the eyes. It is a living bundle of body, feeling, recognition, impulses, and awareness that flows and reorganizes as conditions move. Because of this, the attempt to freeze what moves and to defend what cannot be defended becomes the engine of trouble. The Buddha's teaching style was disarmingly practical. He asked people to look at experience the way a careful doctor looks at a fever. What supports it? What cools it? What keeps bringing it back? He did not say, "Believe because I am who I am." He said, "Look, test, and see." He described the path as something visible in this very life, as when a fever breaks and the skin cools. The promise was not a fantasy of specialness. It was the plain freedom of a mind that no longer sets itself on fire and then blames the world for the heat. At the center of his view is conditionality. Experiences arise when conditions support them, and they pass when conditions shift. To ignore this is to live in arguments with weather. To understand it is to start living in cooperation with the way things work. From that cooperation grows a different kind of confidence. Not the swagger of control, but the steadiness that comes when actions sit on cause and effect instead of on demand and denial. The middle way and the shape of a life. Before awakening, the Buddha tried two opposite experiments. First, he tested refined pleasure and comfort as the road to peace. He found that pleasure fades and multiplies wanting, and comfort keeps shrinking the room where freedom could grow. Then he tested harsh self-denial as the road to purity. He found that a crushed instrument cannot play. From these failures, he named a middle way. It is not a compromise between extremes. It is a sound method between two kinds of blindness, drowning in delight and starving the heart out of pride. This middle way sketches the shape of a whole life. It does not worship impulses, and it does not worship struggle. It honors health, rest, friendship, livelihood, and learning as parts of the ground where clarity and kindness can actually grow. It also refuses to let any of those goods pretend to be final refuges. Enjoy what is wholesome without building a house on it. Let go of what harms without turning renunciation into a performance. The image the Buddha used for practice is a stringed instrument tuned just right. Too tight and it snaps. Too loose and it cannot sing. A life that learns this tuning becomes a human instrument that can carry wisdom without breaking and warmth without slackness. From that tuning, the Buddha spoke of two kinds of roots that feed action. One root system grows from generosity, kindness, and clarity. The other grows from grasping, hostility, and confusion. He did not reduce people to labels. He simply pointed to gardening. Water one set of roots, and you harvest a day of cooperation with reality. Water the other, and you harvest friction. Ethics here is not a scoreboard. It is irrigation. Bring water where it helps. Stop the leaks that keep creating deserts. Because intention steers karma, the Buddha asked people to look beneath outward form. Two deeds can look alike and ripen differently if the mental aim is different. A gift given to look superior ripens as dependence on praise. A gift given to lighten a burden ripens as ease. A boundary drawn to crush ripens as bitterness. A boundary drawn to stop harm ripens as safety. He kept bringing attention back to this quiet steering mechanism. What is the heart doing as the hand moves? He also defended two quiet guardians of goodness conscience that feels inward shame at harming and moral dread that feels outward caution about the consequences of harm. These are not neuroses. They are the nerves of a healthy ethical body. When they function, a person does not need 1,000 rules. When they fail, 10,000 rules cannot keep a city upright. The gradual training the Buddha actually taught. People sometimes imagine the Buddha as a dispenser of slogans. In the old discourses, he comes across more like a builder teaching the order of operations. He called it a gradual training, and he would unfold it in ordinary steps that reached the ear where it stood. He often began with generosity, not because coins have magic, but because giving loosens the reflex to hoard and begins to swap possession for participation. He praised the sweetness that follows a clean gift and the way the mind learns that safety is not the same as ownership. From there, he spoke of conduct that keeps the day from burning down. Refrain from killing, stealing, sexual exploitation, lies that bend the world, and intoxication that unstrings attention. These are not marks of belonging to a club. They are fire codes. Keep them, and fewer flames catch. Break them, and you spend your life running from rooms you lit yourself. He often framed this in a householder's tone. Be faithful, be truthful, be fair, be sober enough to be accountable, be generous enough to share the table. Having set that ground, he would speak of the joy that clean conduct allows. The mind relaxes when it is not busy hiding. That relaxation is not indifference. It is the fuel for deeper work. With that fuel, he would point out the drawbacks of making sensuality the center of a life. Not because senses are dirty, but because building identity on what must fade keeps the heart anxiously negotiating with time. He praised contentment not as a dull lowering of sights, but as the wealth that frees a person to turn toward what grows even as seasons change. Then he taught collectedness. Attention can gather the scattered mind into a steady flame. When it steadies, the old 5 hindrances lose power. Sensual craving quiets because the present becomes enough. Ill will softens because the heart stops gripping. Sloth and torpor lift because clear attention is pleasant on its own. Restlessness and worry calm because the mind has a place to stand. Doubt loosens because the body, breath, and mind begin to show directly what helps and what hurts. The old texts speak of deep absorptions, but the Buddha did not reduce practice to a contest of depth. He aimed for a stable mind that can look honestly without flinching. With steadiness present, insight can do its work. The Buddha asked practitioners to look at breath, body, feeling, mind, and patterns in a particular way. Watch arising, watch changing, watch passing. Let the truth of movement be learned in the marrow rather than recited in the mouth. He did not push metaphysics on listeners. He invited a close seeing that changed the way clinging made sense. When a person sees a mood arrive, peak, and move on 100 times, the mind's old habit of building identity on that mood begins to look unreasonable. When a person watches the twinge that comes before an unskillful act, the fast tilt toward grabbing, the tightening toward biting the space to choose returns, that space is already a taste of freedom. On top of attention and insight, the Buddha placed the 4 immeasurables as a guardrail for the heart. Loving kindness that wishes well without possession, compassion that meets pain without cruelty, appreciative joy that delights in good wherever it appears, and equanimity that keeps care steady when storms pass through. These tones keep wisdom from going cold and keep love from tipping into ownership. Practiced together, they let a person stand in the world without bruising everything they touch. A householder's path and the world beyond the cushion. The Buddha did not reserve dignity for forest monks. He taught kings, merchants, craftspeople, and farmers how to shape a life that did not betray the heart. He spoke of right livelihood without drawing up a market ban of occupations for every era, because he trusted conscience supported by clarity. Income that depends on deception, addiction, trafficking in harm, or deliberate exploitation eats sleep and rots the social fabric. Income that enables honest work, sustains dependence, and avoids fueling harm gives a person a place to stand. He praised fair trade, simple living, and generosity as the cornerstones of a household that does not live by panic. He held up reliable friendship as a public good. Friends who protect when you are exposed, who speak truth when it is risky, who celebrate your gain without envy, and who stand firm when seasons turn. These were honored as blessings greater than windfalls. He warned against companions who lure toward heedlessness, who praise flattery, who vanish when help is costly. Social life, in his view, was training. It could pull a person up into goodness or down into turmoil. Choose carefully and become the kind of person others can choose without fear. He kept returning to speech as the place where worlds are either built or burned. The guidance was simple and hard. Say what is true and aim it at help. Speak at the right time and speak in a way that can be heard. Do not hide needed truth behind politeness, and do not weaponize truth to win applause. If people breathe easier and understand more after you talk, you are close to right speech. He treated patience as a strength, not as a willingness to be harmed. Patience, as he taught it, refuses to let anger decide the method. It does not collapse. It bears with the heat until clarity can do its job, and it draws lines that prevent harm without poisoning the field. The image is not a doormat. It is a seasoned pilot in rough air. He praised modesty, not as self-negation, but as the freedom from constructing a stage everywhere you go. Modesty keeps attention available for learning. It lets gratitude rise easily. It reduces the urge to embroider stories to defend an image. Out of modesty grows a kind of quiet courage. the courage to be taught, to apologize, to repair. He praised contentment as an inner wealth that cannot be stolen by fashion or rivalry. It is not the refusal to improve conditions. It is the refusal to make comparison the main source of aliveness. Contentment leaves room for service. The contented heart does not chase recognition. It builds and lets the work speak. He did not treat death as an obscenity. He invited people to remember that life is short, not to frighten them, but to make priorities honest. Remembering mortality cuts through the trance that says we can postpone respect, postpone truth, postpone care. It turns the ordinary day into the field of practice where it has always been. What ripens when we walk this way? The Buddha used a quiet word for the fruit of this path: cooling. He spoke of greed, hatred, and confusion as fires. When the fuels that feed them are not constantly supplied, the heat subsides. The world is still the world. Birth and death, gain and loss, praise and blame, pleasure and pain, these 8 winds still blow. What changes is the way the heart is blown about. It stops building a self on each gust and starts meeting weather as weather. Calm ripens first as an ease in the body and a reduction in hasty speech. It is not the glassy calm of suppression. It is the clean quiet that follows when fewer fires are being lit. Insight ripens as the ability to see behind the mask of impulses and moods. The mind catches the first lean toward clinging and does not have to follow. It notices the way story inflates experience and does not have to act out the story. It recognizes the wobble of pride and the wobble of despair as the same structure with different costumes. That recognition does not make a person rigid. It makes them agile in the right direction. Compassion ripens as a sturdier warmth. It stops being a mood that appears when it is easy and vanishes when it is costly. It becomes a commitment to refrain from harm, to help when the help will help, and to refrain from rescuing when rescuing would actually injure. It looks at systems as well as at individuals. It cares about causes, not only symptoms. Because it is not owned by a fragile self, it is less easily insulted and more easily redirected where it can do the most good. Freedom ripens as a widening of choice. Not the freedom to satisfy every whim, but the freedom from being jerked around by whims. A person becomes less bribable by pleasure, less blackmailable by pain, less addicted to being seen as right, less allergic to being shown wrong. That is a social blessing as well as a personal relief. Gratitude ripens as a habit of attention. The mind that is not busy managing an image can take in small goodness without embarrassment. The meal is enough. The roof is enough. The breath is a teacher. Friends are a refuge. The day becomes a place where gifts are visible again. Even the sense of self ripens into something roomier. The old tight identification with roles and moods loosens. What remains is not a void. It is a flexible, responsive person who can keep promises and learn from mistakes without turning either into a final verdict. The Buddha did not aim to erase people. He aimed to end the habit of building prisons out of passing weather. The end point of the map he drew is full awakening, the complete cooling of the fires. He described it in metaphors because metaphors are the best a mouth can do about a freedom the mouth cannot contain. As a lamp goes out when oil is exhausted. As a flame that was burning finds nothing left to cling to. He refused to make it a spectacle for applause. He pointed to signs that can be seen. A life less driven by compulsions, a speech less ruled by hurt, a mind that can meet pain without adding the second arrow, a heart that can meet joy without clutching it to death. And along the way, he kept giving people a homely measure for their practice. Do your choices leave fewer burns for you and for others? Does your mind breathe easier than it did last year? Do people around you relax because you are there? Does truth get spoken more cleanly because you are in the room? Are you learning faster from your misses and boasting less about your hits? These are not heavenly scorecards. They are the footprints of a path that is doing what it says it does. So if someone asks, "How should I live?" according to Buddhism, the answer is not a slogan. The answer is a view of life and a training that grows out of that view. See that things built from conditions change. See that clinging tries to arrest that change and hurts itself doing so. See that the self is a living pattern, not a stone idol. See that cause and effect can be used to relieve suffering and grow wisdom. Then follow the shape of practice that the Buddha actually taught: generosity that unknots possession, conduct that keeps rooms from burning, collectedness that steadies attention, 0, 3, insight that sees arising and passing without panic, and a heart trained to wish well, to meet pain kindly, to celebrate good wherever it appears, and to keep care steady when winds blow. From that view and that training, a way of life forms by itself. It fits ordinary clothes. It does not need a spotlight. It shows up in how a person listens, how they speak, how they work, how they argue, how they rest, how they say yes, and how they say no. It shows up in what they stop doing because it keeps causing harm, and in what they keep doing because it keeps planting causes for freedom. The Buddha did not hand out ornaments for the self. He handed out tools for ending needless suffering. He trusted people to use those tools and to judge the results honestly. He trusted that truth tastes like truth when it is tried. If you want a sentence to carry, let it be simple and faithful to his way. Live in line with how things actually are, and let wisdom and kindness do the shaping. The rest status, comparison, mood can keep moving as it will. A life formed on that footing is good not because a judge stamps it approved, but because it keeps cooling fires in a world that needs the relief.